From ITN, the ITV News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Good evening. The railway industry is tonight coming to terms with yet another disaster, but this time one in which the rail companies themselves appear to have been blameless. A Newcastle to London express travelling at more than 100 miles an hour collided with a Land Rover which had accidentally come off the motorway and onto the track. The express was then hit by a fully laden coal train coming the other way.
Have you ever wondered about the butterfly effect? Have you ever wondered what would happen when events line up so perfectly that without them a major event wouldn't have occurred? The Selby rail disaster can be seen as one of those events. But without the perfect alignment of three events wouldn't have happened. In the first episode of Tack Shorts, we will look at three events that aligned and subsequently caused the Selby rail disaster. The East Coast Main Line is a 393-mile long electrified track that links London with Edinburgh and sees 41 trains a day travelling at 125 miles an hour. With a journey time between the two capital cities of 5 hours and 20 minutes, a journey that by car would take just over 7 hours. Event number one that led up to disaster started the night before, on the 27th of February 2001. Gary Hart was a 37-year-old builder from Strubby in Lincolnshire. He had stayed up late talking to a woman he had met on the internet, 40-year-old Christine Painter. The two of them had planned to meet up the night of the crash. He later told police the conversation had left him buzzing with excitement and unable to sleep. Miss Painter made him feel so alive, and that he had never met anyone that made him feel this way before. Gary Hart described himself as a very hard-working man. He was the boss of a building firm that had mainly dealt with pubs and hotels. He would work for as long as he wanted, sometimes working for up to 36 hours at a time without taking a break, just to get the job done. He was also described as a very level-headed man, who would often get up at 4 or 5 a.m. to drive to work many miles away. On the morning of the 28th of February, Gary Hart set off for work as usual, but as he travelled westbound on the M62, the late night finally caught up to him, and he fell asleep behind the wheel of his car. His Land Rover, which was also towing a trailer, left the carriageway just before the bridge over the East Coast Main Line, running 30 yards down the embankment before coming to a stop on the railway tracks. By this point, Gary had woken up, but couldn't reverse his Land Rover off the tracks. He exited the vehicle and proceeded to call the emergency services, and it was while he was on the phone to the emergency services, he heard the sound of the GNER Intercity 225 Newcastle to London train hurtling towards him.
The collision had happened in darkness, but hours later they were still taking away the injured and fighting through the wreckage to locate the bodies of those who did not survive. The goods train, which had been carrying 1,500 tons of coal, stayed on the track, but parts of the passenger express travelling at 120 miles an hour simply disintegrated on impact.
At 6:13 a.m, the London-bound train made contact with Gary's Land Rover. The leading bogie of the DVT derailed, but the train stayed upright, which leads to event number two. At exactly the same time, a Freight freight train heading for Ferrybridge Power Station was passing just at the point that the train had been deflected by a nearby siding. The impact between the two trains occurred 642 metres away from where the train had hit the Land Rover, and it resulted in severe to moderate damage to all 9 carriages, with all 9 carriages turning on their side and coming to a rest down an embankment in an adjacent field. Immediately before the impact of the two trains, the speed of the Intercity 225 was estimated at 88 miles per hour, and that the freight train as 54 miles per hour. With an estimated closing speed of 142 miles per hour, the collision between the two trains was the highest speed railway incident that had occurred in the UK since the Ladbroke Grove crash. Both train drivers, 2 additional train crew on board the Intercity 225, and 6 passengers were killed as a result of the collision between the two trains. Survivors of the accident included train driver instructor Andrew Hill, who was travelling in the cab of the freight train and teaching a new route to the driver. The coaches of the Intercity 225 were carrying 99 passengers and train staff. The early morning 4:45 time of departure from Newcastle resulted in reduced passenger numbers. As it was, 45 of the 52 seriously injured passengers and all 8 fatalities, excluding the 2 locomotive drivers, were travelling in the first 5 coaches, which included a restaurant car and 2 first-class coaches with less densely packed seating than standard coaches. In total, 82 survivors were taken to hospital. The official incident report praised the crashworthiness of this Intercity 225 Mark IV coaches. Gary Hart escaped the incident unscathed, but was later charged with 10 counts of causing death by dangerous driving and sentenced to 5 years in prison and 5-year driving ban. He would later argue in court that he was not to blame for the crash, for it was the collision between the two trains that had caused the deaths. He also argued that the bridge safety barrier was not up to scratch, as he was easily broken through the wooden fence 30 metres before the bridge. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe, and until next time, thank you.